Have you heard the one about Portugal stealing all of Brazil's gold? It's a popular story online, but it's just not true. There is a growing online narrative in Brazil that portrays Portugal as a uniquely destructive, murderous colonizer that stole all the gold and left nothing behind. This narrative is emotionally powerful, but historically inaccurate, and it often serves more to avoid responsibility than to explain reality. Portugal took all the gold, a popular myth, not a fact. Yes, gold was extracted in the colonial period. But the idea that Portugal carried all of it away is simply false. The Portuguese crown collected taxes such as the quinto, 20%, plus administrative costs. The majority of the gold stayed in the hands of Brazilian-born elites, merchants, miners, and local authorities. A significant portion of the wealth was invested directly in the colony cities: churches, ports, roads, administrative structures, defense, and institutions that became the foundation of the future Brazilian state. Many historians argue that part of what Portugal received effectively acted as payment for the state apparatus that kept the territory unified, which later allowed Brazil to become a single continental nation rather than break into several republics like Spanish America. The idea of a uniquely murderous Portuguese colonization is exaggerated. Portugal did commit exploitation and slavery, this is undeniable. But the claim that it was the most violent or destructive colonial power is simply historically wrong. When compared to the British Empire, the Belgian Congo, Spanish colonization, French imperialism, Portugal was not the most lethal, nor the most culturally destructive. Proper perspective, something often ignored in online debates, dominated by emotion and slogans rather than scholarship. Brazilian schools themselves taught for decades the idea that Portugal drained all the wealth. And so this myth continues to circulate. It would have been better if the English had colonized us, a complete fantasy. Many Brazilians say this without any understanding of British imperial history. The British Empire was responsible for engineered famines, for example, Bengal, 1943, cultural erasure, large-scale massacres, racial segregation and apartheid systems, and economic destruction of entire regions. To imagine that the British colonization model would have produced a gentler or more humane outcome shows deep unfamiliarity with global history. It is a nostalgic illusion, not an argument. The pattern of blaming Portugal to avoid modern responsibility, a recurring issue in Brazilian discourse, is the tendency to blame the Portuguese past to justify the Brazilian present. This avoids confronting the fact that the independent Brazilian state maintained slavery 66 years longer after independence, concentrated land and wealth internally, made its own political choices for over 2 centuries, developed its own elite structures and inequalities. Not everything, in fact, not most things, can be blamed on the 18th century. At some point, responsibility must be recognized in the decisions made after independence. The Brazilian internet ecosystem amplifies misinformation. Brazil has one of the largest and most active online communities in the world. This creates powerful echo chambers where simplified narratives, emotional slogans, and historical misinformation spread far faster than academic truth. The dominant version of Portuguese colonization online is often shaped by viral posts, not by historians. As a result, nuance disappears, and Portugal becomes a symbolic villain used to explain everything that has gone wrong, instead of being discussed with accuracy. Conclusion: Portugal was a colonizer, not an angel and not a monster. There was exploitation, but there was also investment, construction, integration, and administration. Portugal did not take all the gold. Most of it stayed in Brazil. It was not the most destructive colonial empire. Brazilians cannot continue blaming the past to avoid accountability for the present. The truth is far more complex, far more balanced, and far more inconvenient for those who depend on simple narratives.